What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of Flow State with yours truly, Harry Mack. In this episode, I'm going to introduce you all to Vacation Harry. We're going to explore the non-linear nature of creative work. We're going to answer the question, maybe, does flow state exist in the kitchen? I'm going to react to a freestyle from one of you. I'm going to close it out with a freestyle of my own. Y'all know how we do. Flow state, baby. Let's go.
This is from my flow state. Add it. Yeah. Y'all know we back at it. Ain't it crazy how the mind works magic? We gon' show you the method behind the madness, 'cause this is from my flow.
What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of Flow State with yours truly, Harry Mack. Very excited to be here, joined as always by my man Sam, virtually. How you doing, Doc?
What up, what up? Episode 38, dude. Flow State.
Yes, indeed.
38 eps. That's pretty, we're getting up there, man. This episode almost has enough to have some lore now building.
That's what I'm saying. We definitely got some lore, man. Yeah, we've had multiple studio setups along the way. We've been in hotel rooms at this point. We've really stuck it out.
Catalog is growing, bro.
Absolutely. Yeah, and what is that
lately, dog?
What is that? I want to answer that, but first I was wondering, what is that stat that's 99% of podcasts don't make it to episode 10 or something like that? It's like a motivational stat that you hear dropped all the time, not even in the context of literally making podcasts, but just like as a general motivator. Like if you just keep showing up, you're doing better than whatever
it would be
percent.
hard to give up on it at this point.
Yeah.
We got it going.
Yeah, we're established, baby. We're established. 38.
Statistically closer to 40 than we've ever been.
It's so true, dude. And once you hit 40, man, those are the golden years, so. But what have I been up to? I've been out, man, out in Los Angeles. We took a trip out there. I was there for 10 days, and I had a gig right at the beginning. So the first, we flew out to LA, me, my wife, and my daughter, and just the three of us. It was actually the first extended trip of just the trio. No additional grandparent babysitter action going on. So we were stoked, and then also a little scared, oh, are we going to be able to handle this, just the three of us? And it's of course we can. We've done it all the time at home, but when you're traveling, there's the added stress of being on planes and, hotel rooms, and are we going to be able to get groceries that my daughter can eat at 10 months? And, she's eating solid foods, but only some, and they have to be kind of soft, and she only has 2 teeth. So can we order stuff for her at restaurants? How's that work? But it went awesome, man. It was so great. And it was cool too, because my gig, I did a corporate gig out there, and it was right at the beginning. So we flew out, slept one night, and then the very next day I went to the Anaheim Convention Center and did a thing out there, which went really well. And then my work was done. And we were out there for, 9 days after that, pretty much just on vacation, which is crazy. Because I've struggled with vacation in the past, to be completely honest. I'm still not the best at it, but this was kind of the first vacation I feel like in a long time, maybe ever, where I just was kind of, it felt easy. And I was going to say that I leaned in, but it wasn't even an intentional leaning in where I'm okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to vacation, man. Let me just try. It was I didn't try. I just was there. And I didn't rap, really, other than the gig. And I didn't drum at all. I brought my drum pad and my drumsticks because, of course, before you leave, you start getting nervous. I got to have my stuff. I got to be able to work. But I didn't touch it, man. And so no drumming, no rapping for 9 days. And it was awesome. It was great. I don't know. I was wow, what was that? What was that? And in the past, also just to provide context, why has that been hard? I just feel for me, and maybe some people watching and listening can relate. Sam, maybe you can relate. I'm so obsessed with what I do, and I'm so passionate about what I do, and I love it. And I am, frankly, kind of an obsessive person, in some ways. And of course, being overly obsessed with certain things can become toxic and can be unhealthy, right? And at the same time, if you have sort of a healthy obsession with something that you really love and really care a lot about, that can be really powerful. I don't think I would be as far along in terms of developing my skill set as a freestyler or as a drummer if I didn't go through long stretches of time where I was just so obsessed with both of those instruments and learning how to get better and practicing and studying and so on and so forth. So, obsession can be a really powerful thing, so long as you keep it in balance and don't let it, spin you off into a sort of a unhealthy place where you're not taking care of anything else, right? But yeah, because I love what I do so much, it's sort of hard for me to like relax into a vacation. Like for real, we're just gonna sit on this beach, like in the sun for like multiple days. Like I got like 2 hours of that in me, and then I'm gonna be like, okay, like when do we make the stuff? When do I get to express myself? And actually, it's funny. This is kind of a tangent, but it just reminded me at the end of Odyssey tour, because we ended in Hawaii, in Honolulu. And then this was before we had our daughter, of course. But my wife and I were like, yo, let's do a vacation, like we never do this. Like, let's just stay in Hawaii. We're already going to be there. So we ended up like getting a room, like a super nice room in like a bougie ass hotel, in Honolulu. And it was like on the beach, and it was sick. But it was like, it was hard to sort of almost like come down from everything that had just happened on the tour. It was like, whoa, like my brain was still spinning kind of. But there's these hilarious pictures of me from that. And we just joke that it's Vacation Harry. Like, oh, look, it's Vacation Harry. Because I was like in a costume. I like looked like I was like not even myself. Like I'm wearing this like literally like basically a Hawaiian shirt, like not the full pattern, but like a flowy short sleeve button up shirt, like only buttoned halfway up, and then I'm wearing this like these like short swim trunks, and I'm just like laying out on like a bed on the beach, like, yo, what up, what up? And I'm just like, yo, who is that? Like it even looks wrong when I'm on vacation,
It's almost like you had to put on the uniform to even embrace it. You're like, what do people do? Like, okay, you get
yeah, exactly. I'm like blotching sunscreen on, so it's like visibly white on my skin. Just, look, I'm doing it. But yeah, dude, it's so funny. We will not be overlaying those photos, so don't ask editors.
We'll see.
No, maybe. I don't know. Probably not. It's on my OnlyFans. No, just kidding. But yeah, so anyway, yeah, vacation has been hard. I really obviously identify as a musician, so it's one of those strange things. I've talked about this at various times on the pod. It's kind of a recurring theme to a degree, but it's like a lot of times when you work a lot and you prioritize work, depending on what you do, people will be like, oh, this person's very career oriented. And I've never felt that way, really. Like, it's not that I'm career oriented. It's that, like, I am a musician. Like, I have to do this. Like, I have to express myself through music, regardless of, whether it makes me money or happens to be my career, which I'm so grateful that it is my career. It's such a huge privilege and blessing, to be able to do this full time and make my living doing it. So I don't take it for granted. But even outside of that, I have to do it, So, so when that's the case, it's difficult to kind of say, no, you're not going to do that for like a long stretch, And like, it's always so weird because most people are like, hell yeah, man, I can't wait to go on vacation. And then for me, it's kind of like, oh no, here we go. Like, how am I going to get through this? Like, can I pack a keyboard? Like, do I have a small enough keyboard, battery power? Should I pack this beat machine? But that stuff starts to add up fast, like in your backpack, and it's like, I'm not bringing like a whole big Pelican case like we're on tour. Like, I can't do that. So it's like, all right, what am I going to bring to like scratch the itch? And yeah, I don't know. I think, you know what? I think a big part of it, I hadn't even realized this, but as I'm talking through this LA vacation that I just went on that I sort of effortlessly enjoyed to my own surprise, I think a big piece of that is probably having my daughter now, and like now that she's in the picture, it's like I do genuinely just want to like spend so many moments with her. And she's 10 months old, there's not that much that she can do, she like has her toys that we bring with us, and like I read books to her, but I also just like watch her like try to start crawling and like watch her eat and feed her, and like it's kind of like parents will relate, but it's like all these sort of undefined in between moments that you're never going to get back, and they're happening now. And so I bet that is a big piece of it. But I don't know, man. It was cool. I feel very refreshed, and now being back here, I played drums again, and in some ways I felt rusty. Just today I played my drums for the first time in like 10 days. And in some ways I felt rusty, like technically rusty. But then in other ways I felt refreshed and energized and like, oh, this is better. It's always this weird thing. Sometimes like taking a break and then coming back to the craft, you almost like level up in that break, the same way you kind of like, you know how you kind of really learn the shit when you're sleeping? Like you study all day, but then you go to sleep and then you wake up and now you have it. I think it's kind of like similar to that, where it's like you practice all the time and you work hard and you're grinding through it. And then sometimes you take a break and you come back and like, oh, okay, some of the dots connected. So anyway, that's nice, man. But I don't know, man. Vacation. What's your vibe on vacation, Sam? Like how have you do you like it? Do you not like it? Is it a challenge? Is it easy?
I mean, not to mimic like a lot of what you were laying out there, but it's not that natural to me. Yeah. And I think a lot of it, I mean, this will probably apply to non-creative work as well, but like creatively, like it seems like there is no finish line on a lot of the things that I have like going on, whether it's like multiple projects at once. And it's like, you know, so it's almost like I'm always considering what could be done at any given point, because that hill of perfecting and polishing this one video or project is never actually going to be there. Yeah. So yeah. I consistently am like, when I'm heading out on vacation, I'm wondering like, I pack way too many hard drives because I'm like, well, they all have different projects on them. And I'm like, I'm not sure which project is going to need to be done or whatever. But I do find a lot of what you said as well is like when I can shut it off, and I have gotten better at this in the last year or two, by far compared to the years before, where I just honestly like kind of never turned it off. It really is like it's like a mind refresher, like creative refresher, where like I really do realize at a certain point I go too far with the tunnel vision and like diving in on stuff to the point where like I don't necessarily know the best case of like what's up and down in a project, and you kind of like lose grasp of like the fundamental like compass of like your creative choices. And I really think like just kind of washing that out for a little bit is so beneficial. So I'm trying to get better at that as well.
Agreed, dude. No, I feel you, man. I feel you 100%. Yeah, and I feel like it's kind of like you never really have to shut your computer down these days. Like you could just like buy the new MacBook, turn it on once and just like leave it on forever. But it's like, but they do recommend like, hey, like maybe once a month or so, just like power it all the way down at night and then turn it back on the next day. You know, it's just good for it, you know, even if
cache.
Yeah, clear that cache. And even if it's not going to do like any major updates or anything, they just say like, yeah, just it's healthy, you know, don't just like run the shit forever. And I think the creative mind and probably just the human mind in general is the same way. But yeah, it's tough. Any sort of artistic pursuit is infinite, you know, like I'm never going to just like, I did music, I learned music, check, done. What should I learn now? You know, it's like, no, man, you're just constantly looking at it from slightly different angles and finding new, just like infinite tunnels of information that you could go down if you so choose. Yeah. And so, yeah, there does become that obsessive, like, oh, I got to work at it. I got to work at it. I got to work at it. If I'm not working at it, what am I doing? You know, like it's an important thing, of course, to chip away at it. But yeah, I agree, man. Taking that reset eventually, fleshing out the system, man, and then just coming back to it clear is really valuable. And I do feel good, man. So, and I got to see a lot of friends in LA, people I haven't seen in a while since we moved out east. So that was really fulfilling as well. And, you know, it's something that I have to bring intentionality to, you know, just investing in and developing friendships, you know, like I'm very grateful that we're all friends, you know, the whole squad, this team, you know, we're all friends and you know, when the squad rolls out on tour together, we get to experience these like once in a lifetime moments together. It brings us all really close. So there's definitely, you know, a real friendship there among us. And that's beautiful. But yeah, like, you know, left to my own devices, again, I am pretty introverted. I do love work and I love what I do and I'm very passionate about it and it's infinite by nature. So I can end up just sort of like being isolated for extended periods of time or for the bulk of the day until I go up and I'm with my family. And so, yeah, and especially now with a kid, right? It's like, okay, time is more limited in a sense than it's ever been. You know, I'm stretched a bit more thin than I've ever been. So it's like, okay, it's non-negotiable that I'm going to spend time with my wife and kids, you know, non-negotiable. It's also non-negotiable that I'm going to work on my craft. And then like, there's the work I do to get better at my craft, which is sort of separate from like the work that I am required to do for this team, if that makes sense. Like the actual work of like finishing YouTube videos and like getting them out to the world. You know, my role in those processes is a thing that is separate from like, oh no, but I'm going to practice drums for 2 hours, or I'm going to practice freestyling to get incrementally better at this technique for a month. It's like, okay, cool, do that. But also you got to reply to these Discord comments, you know, and you got to keep pushing things through and be there for the team. So time is stretched thin. So then like what doesn't get any attention is like friendships outside of that, you know? And it's like, I for whatever reason, I can go quite a while, you know, without being like, oh, I really need to work on this. But I think having friends is, first of all, it's known that it's like one of the biggest predictors of lifespan is like how strong of a friend community you have, or maybe just a community in general. So I'm sure it could be family members too, but it's like how close are you with other people and how like deep are those bonds? If you don't have that, like if you're truly isolated, it like correlates to lifespan. You're not going to live as long, which is crazy. But also just, I love having friends, you know, at the end of the day. And I can ignore that fact and pretend that that's not true and be like, yeah, but I gotta handle the work and I gotta be with my family and there's no time. So whatever, you know, but it's like, dude, I don't like where that leads, you know, like if I'm not investing in friendships and then I'm just like isolating myself because I'm so obsessed with my work and the rest of the time goes to family, it's like, I'm going to lift my head up one day and be like, damn, I don't have any friends, you know? And how sad is that? And it's so unhealthy but beyond that, it's just not going to create a happy, balanced life for me. So I sometimes need a push, you know, to remind myself like, hey, this is really important. And it's one of those important, but not urgent things, right? Like there are things in life that are important and urgent, and those get done because they have to. It's like, hey, this video is coming out Friday and we need your notes. Okay, that's important and urgent. I have to do it. But like investing in friendships for the long haul, like for the decades, you know what I mean? That's important, but not urgent. So you could sleep on it and then it'll be too late, you know? Like exercise is like that, important, but not urgent. As long as your body is more or less healthy, you can go a long time without exercising, but eventually you're going to mess up your shoulder and then mess up your back. Take it from me. So these important, but non-urgent things are like some of the most important things to invest in. And so anyway, it was awesome to be on vacation, which is important, but not urgent, seeing friends and investing in friendships, which is important but not urgent. And I'm so glad I got to see people and soak up other people's energy and just have some laughs and share some stories and bond with other human beings. And it felt really good.
That's the stuff, man. Like that is the stuff. Like we can focus on not like our projects and like hold them on a pedestal of how important certain things are creatively to us. Like personally, we can focus on like, okay, I have to get the car worked on because I can't drive like right away. But like that stuff that you have to like actually put effort into. And like, I always want to be there. I want to know my friends' kids' names. I want to know what's happening in their lives and like keep that, you know, channel of communication open, because the thing is like these days, if you do just tunnel into your own thing for a while, like, you know, our lanes of communication are so open that it's almost easy to not use, like people will allow you to do so. It's like, okay, like he's not like invested in this, like he's not necessarily my person to go to for this thing. And like, I want to be involved in those things because that is life, you know, and like
100%.
I want my friends to be there for me like that too. So it gets tricky, man. Like even with the lines of communication, like I'm just saying, like to get out on vacation now, like it's hard because like everyone's available at all times, and it's like, well, okay, no, I'm not right now, like on this like end, like, you know, it's just hard to like deal with that. Everyone's like always open for communication, it seems like, right? And it makes it hard to like allow yourself to close or open those lanes at the right time.
Absolutely, bro. Yeah, like we're in theory more connected than ever, but yet our lived experience, if you ask anyone like if they feel connected, it's like, no, less than ever before. You know, we have more ways of reaching out to people than imaginable, but like we're all just kind of isolated. So
like, what are we talking about through those? Like a lot of times, like not much,
right?
You know? Like unless you get one-on-one and get down to the like what is going on in life. So
exactly,
I'm happy to hear that, bro.
Hell yeah!
Actually, like goes a lot with Moments of Flow coming up here. We'll get back to in a second, but it just totally like nice connection actually forming.
Dope.
So yeah, coming up soon.
Dude, well, I'm very excited for that, man. And we're going to get into it in a second. Real quick, before we do, just want to let you all know, if you haven't heard, I'm going to be in Europe this summer. In just a couple months now, actually. I'm going to be in Europe in July. And by the time this episode comes out, it'll be even sooner. 3 festivals, 3 headlining shows. 2 of those 3 headlining shows are already sold out. So to those of you who have tickets, thank you so much. Shout out to the fans in Europe who always go hard and come through and rock out. The energy is always high. And look, if all 3 headliners sell out, do not worry, because the festivals will almost certainly have tickets available. Yeah. So please get hip. 6 shows in total, July 4th through July 16th. We're out there. harrymacofficial.com/shows is where you go to purchase those tickets. Can't wait to rock with y'all, man.
It's going to be sick, man.
Hell yeah.
Flying into Moments of Flow, though. Now I can't wait.
Yes.
Because it kind of does attach to what you're going into here a little bit. This first one clip that I pulled is actually just an excerpt from his book. I just kind of found the audio book and pulled this part that I found really interesting. The author is Austin Kleon, which I believe you're familiar with to some degree.
Yep.
He's written some very interesting pieces on basically just exploring the creative process, and kind of just what I find encouraging out of it is like how to just embrace like getting it out there and like setting up a process in a way that is structured to allow yourself to like, okay, here's my process. This is finished. Put it out there and live with the results. You know, it's always such a hard thing to like say, okay, this is done, let me put it out there. But Kleon has like a really just straightforward way of doing it. And besides that, I also want to mention he's like got really dope art that's like basically called like Blackout Poetry, where he kind of describes himself as like a writer who like draws. And what that means is like a lot of his stuff is like multimedia art. So he'll like cut out words from different like newspaper clippings. He'll black out a lot of the words, and then the words that remain say something out. Just a really like creative dude. So this is a portion from one of his books, which is called Keep Going, 10 Ways to Stay Creative in Good Times and Bad. And is this something that you've read before? Or
I don't know if I've read this one. The one that I have from him in the physical form is called Steal Like an Artist, which I think is from the same series. I think there's 3 books in this series, and I've listened to one of the other ones as an audio book. Actually, I think I think all 3 are sort of combined as one audiobook experience on Audible, I just hit play from the beginning. So I think I've heard bits and pieces of all of them. I was listening to it on tour, so I would be like kind of dozing in and out on a plane, not because the material is boring, just because that's what I do on planes. The material is actually incredible. And Steal Like an Artist is the one that I own in physical form, and it was super impactful for me. I learned a lot from it. And what's really cool about the books from this series is they're small and they're very approachable. You could read the whole thing in an afternoon, but it's like one of those things where, yes, you can read it in an afternoon, but you're going to want to read it 100 times. And every time you read it, you get something new from it, you know, based on where you are in your journey currently. And I mean, I echo everything that you mentioned about him just really encouraging artists to like push through that resistance and get things out. And he has a lot of like practical strategies and tips that are like immediately useful, instead of like, you know, sometimes it can be really esoteric and it's like, oh, I don't know exactly what to make of that or how to use it right now today. Whereas his shit is, a lot of it is like, hey, here's something you could try. If you've been struggling to, you know, push past the resistance, here's something you could try. If you've been struggling because you don't know how to pull in inspiration in a way that still, you know, retains your authenticity, here's something you could try. So definitely a fan of Austin Kleon, and I'm excited to peep what we have here.
Yeah, man. Those 3 books, by the way, I'll just mention real quick. It's Show Your Work, 10 Ways to Share Your Creativity, and then Steal Like an Artist, like you said, and then Keep Going, 10 Ways to Stay Creative in Good Times and Bad. So, and like you said, man, it's like you have like Rick Rubin, the Creative Act.
Yeah.
Is one way of like getting some of these ideas across, but I really have to like sit with like a paragraph over and over and over again to figure out what I pull.
Yeah.
And I just love the way that Austin breaks down his ideas. So I pulled this little piece here from one of his books.
Hell yeah. I love it. All right, let's run it.
The reason is this: the creative life is not linear. It's not a straight line from point A to point B. It's more like a loop or a spiral, in which you keep coming back to a new starting point after every project. No matter how successful you get, no matter what level of achievement you reach, you will never really arrive. Other than death, there is no finish line or retirement for the creative person.
Wow. Woo! Let me just... Austin Kleon dropping the truth bombs. Let's go. I love it, man. I love what he shared here, and I wholeheartedly agree with it. I mean, just kind of working backwards, the part about other than death, there's no finish line or retirement for the artist. That really resonates a lot. You know, I remember I got to see the drummer Roy Haynes in New York like a long time ago when I was still in college. So somewhere between 2008 and 2012. And I took a trip out to New York and I saw Roy Haynes, one of the great jazz drummers, for his like 80th birthday celebration. Although it was hilarious because afterwards I went up to him and I was like, hey, happy birthday. And he's like, what? And I was like, happy birthday. This is like your 80th birthday show, right? He's like, every show I do this year is called my 80th birthday show. I don't know. I was like, oh, okay, word. But in any case, he was just crushing on stage at least 80. Wow. And yeah, music keeps you young, you know, so you don't ever really have to retire. And I feel like in my mind and in my heart, I will never retire. Even if I'm not going out on big stages and rapping in front of people in my 80s. Maybe I will be. That'd be awesome. I hope so. We'll just have to see. But yeah, the point that he's making earlier in this clip about, you know, how you always sort of start anew. The creative life is not linear, right? Like, it's not like first you lay your foundation and then you lay your first floor and then you put a floor on top of that. And it's like you're always kind of starting from scratch. And I wholeheartedly agree with that philosophy. And it definitely applies to me as a freestyler. You know, every time I go out and perform, whether I'm going out on stage in front of a big audience or just going out to film guerrilla bars or just connecting with somebody one-on-one, like when I was filming Omegle bars or via Zoom for happy hour, whatever it is, you know, I always feel like I'm starting from scratch. And I think that's what I like so much about guerrilla bars, for example, is the fact that, you know, I'm, for the most part, performing for strangers. Nowadays, a lot of times somebody will know who I am out of the group or I'll get recognized more. And so we incorporate that into the video as well. But still, to a large degree, I'm performing for people who have never heard of me before, right? And so in those instances, it's like your resume doesn't matter, you know? Like, it shouldn't matter. Like, I don't want to go around being like, yo, I made an epic freestyle video in 2017. Have you seen it? You should have. Like, I'm legit. You know, it's like, what? Nah, man. Every time I get out there, I'm starting from nothing. Who cares what I did last year or 3 years ago or even last week or even 10 minutes ago? Like, that has already been done, you know? That's already evaporated into the ether. I mean, we probably filmed it, so not really. It'll come out in 3 weeks on YouTube. But the point is, like, that's already done, you know? And we're here now in this new moment. And so we're starting from scratch. And it's going to be what it is in this moment, you know? And so for me, I really connect with that idea of, you know, I'm not like stacking my resume per se with every freestyle that I do. But I'm learning from every freestyle that I do, and I'm sort of carrying that into the next moment when I get to freestyle. And in that moment, again, I will be building from scratch. And I think creatively, you know, this applies as well. And I think that's more so what he's speaking to, is that, you know, in some ways, art is not something that you just like. This is going to be a little confusing because I think there's two truths here that we have to hold simultaneously. But what I was going to say is, in some ways, art is not necessarily something that you just get better at the more you do it, you know, necessarily, like in a linear way. It's not just like, okay, like maybe shooting free throws is more like that. You know, I don't know, though. We would have to interview somebody in the NBA who could really speak to this, right? But I might imagine that like shooting free throws might be more like the more you do it, you just like linearly get better. It's like I shot 50 free throws today, shoot 50 tomorrow. Fast forward a year of consistency, it's just like, yo, you are so much better at free throws, right? But like creating a piece of art, and the reason I said you have to hold two truths is, yes, you do get better. The only way to get better is to do it more, right? So it's like, well, what? How can those both be true? But I just think the linear growth of shooting 50 free throws every day, or doing an arm curl with weight and just gradually increasing the weight and increasing the reps is maybe an even better example, right? Like that's just like mathematics and numbers. Like if you're doing it right with good form, like the weight will go up and the number of reps will go up over time. And so with art, I just don't think it's that way. It's not like, well, just because you did 100 paintings, that means that your 101st painting will just be the best one you've ever done. Like, of course it's not that way, because one, it's subjective, so there is no best you've ever done. And two, there's all these cases where people are like, yo, this is my favorite album. The second album is my favorite. Often it's the first, but I didn't want to say that because I don't like how that's always the narrative and it typecasts artists. But like, everybody has their favorite album and it's not always like the newest one that came out, right? So if it was like doing arm curls, then like your latest album would always be your greatest album, and I just don't think that's the case. And there are instances where people who really haven't done that many reps just happen to create something that's like really moving and really profound, even though they might lack a lot of sort of like technical facility.
Yeah.
So I think this resonates a lot in that sense as well, that art is not, it can't be plotted on a chart or graphed out on an Excel sheet. That's not what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with something much more spiritual, I think.
Yeah, it's just when someone comes in, maybe green to the industry or something, and they're not as zoned in and, let's say, experienced enough to think of what they should be focusing on. A lot of times that kind of freshness and them focusing on a different element is what makes a project so unique. And it's like the more you work on something, just because they got better at like maybe their drums got sounding way like the production sounds better and everything like that, you could focus all on that, but maybe that's not the magic spark of what made something as special as it was, and that's to say you can't just focus on that special thing again and just recreate it. It's just so it's just messy like that. So yeah. And this just connected me to what you were kind of talking about in the opening. Just because it's not linear, it's not point A to point B. You can't say, okay, I got to point B here, let me like cool out in Hawaii and just no job well done necessarily.
Exactly.
Like it's difficult in that way. So that's kind of what made me connect those dots.
Hell yeah, dude. No, I feel that. This is great, man. Shout out to Austin Kleon. Thank you for the great books and the great thoughts and the inspiration. I love it.
Yeah, check them out, everyone. Those books are super easy to read and super helpful if you're dealing with any of this type of creative process. And we actually have a bonus Moments of Flow.
Let's get it. The twofer.
We got David Bowie.
The Bowie bonus. Let's go.
If you will.
Hell yeah. Arvydas Sabonis coming through. Hell yeah.
No introduction really needed here, but I will say this is a cool snippet brought from a documentary called Inspirations. And the cool thing about this documentary is that it's about the creative process, but the director, Michael Apted, talked to people from every genre across such a wide range. So you get some heavy hitters like David Bowie here and a lot more niche artists as well. So I recommend pulling this up if you're interested at all. And this is a clip from David Bowie.
Hell yeah. Dope, dude. And I also would like to admit that I have not done the David Bowie deep dive that I desperately need to do. I know he's a certified legend, but I am pretty much ignorant to his catalog. So that's something that I should do. Note to self. And I'm very excited to hear what he has to share here. So let's rock it.
Never play to the gallery, I think. But you never learn that until much later on, I think. But never work for other people at what you do. Always remember that the reason that you initially started working was that there was something inside yourself that you felt that if you could manifest it in some way, you would understand more about yourself and how you coexist with the rest of society. And I think it's terribly dangerous for an artist to fulfill other people's expectations. I think they generally produce their worst work when they do that. And the other thing I would say is that if you feel safe in the area that you're working in, you're not working in the right area. Always go a little further into the water than you feel you're capable of being in. Go a little bit out of your depth. And when you don't feel that your feet are quite touching the bottom, you're just about in the right place to do something exciting.
Woo! Yeah. David Bowie dropping some truth. I love it. You know what's crazy is actually the sort of like second part of this where he talks about, you know, if you feel safe in the area you're working in, then you need to push yourself a little, right? And get outside of that comfort zone. That's like such a eloquent explanation of what flow state is, which is pretty awesome. Like this is like very dialed in terms of the subject matter, that part in particular, because, you know, as we've talked about in the past, flow state is that place where you're at the razor's edge of your ability and skill, right? So you're just able to do the task if you focus and concentrate on it wholeheartedly. So it has to be difficult, you know, but not too difficult. And so I love that part in particular. And I love what he has to share at the beginning too. It's really interesting for me because on the one hand, I really agree with what he's saying that, you know, you can't do it for the audience. And that's actually, speaking of Rick Rubin, who you mentioned earlier, like that's very aligned with Rubin's approach as well. He's talked a lot about that, how like you should basically completely ignore the audience. Like they're not even part of the equation. And not even just like the audience at home, but like anybody who's going to have any opinion about packaging or anything outside of the art itself, they don't exist, you know?
Right.
And I think it's beautiful, and I think there's so much truth in it. And in many ways, I agree with it. You know, I think certainly if you're in the studio creating, for example, just to stick within music for right now, because that's what I know best. If you're in the studio recording, or if you're writing, you know, like at the piano with the manuscript paper out, or if you're a composer of some kind, or if you're writing lyrics, I think in those instances, yeah, you should not consider the audience at all, you know, because if you do, it's going to corrupt the authenticity of what you're working on, right? Like if you're thinking about, well, how's this going to go over with an audience, or how's this going to be marketed, or like, does this make sense in the context of the other songs that I already have? It's like, dude, let go of all of that stuff. That's just going to slow you down, confuse you, scatter your mind, make you change yourself in subtle ways that you may or may not even be conscious of. And then the end result is going to be disconnected from who you really are, right? And it's not going to be the authentic creativity that you could have tapped into if you just were able to let go of all those things. Easier said than done. So in that sense, I very much agree with this. And then there's another part of me that sometimes pushes back against this notion of like the audience doesn't matter, which is not explicitly what's being said here, by the way. But between, you know, Rick Rubin's take on it and this take as well from David Bowie, one, who am I to disagree with either of those people? But two, part of me does push back in a sense, I think, especially if I'm thinking about live performance, you know, and I've talked in the past too about how like I'm very much an entertainer. And so I feel to a degree like there's an arrangement with the audience, you know, if they're coming to my show, they're expecting to be entertained, right? Or moved in some way. And so therefore it is my job to do everything in my capacity to make sure that happens, you know? And I think that to me, that makes sense and that feels healthy. And so I'm not personally going to do like the Miles Davis, turn my back to the audience for the whole show. But then again, that's what Miles Davis did. And he's the coolest, baddest dude of all time. So, you know, different strokes for different folks. But I also feel too, more broadly, even outside of live performance, that music is a form of communication, right? Yes, it is a form of self-expression, and that's beautiful, but it's also a form of communication, you know, and like my favorite records were like reaching out to me through the headphones, you know, and sort of conversing with me in a way, even though I wasn't able to talk back. But I did sort of have conversations with the music in an abstract sense where it's like I'm learning about myself through these records and they're teaching me things and I'm having certain takeaways at different points in my life. And like it's helping me frame my perspective and understand who I am. So there is, in my view, sort of a two-way thing that's happening, you know, between the creator of the art and the audience, to where the audience is actually essential and involved. And so sometimes I feel like if I was the last human on Earth, you know, like pluribus vibes or whatever, like if I was the last human being on Earth, would I create art? And yes, I think I would, because again, I think I was born a musician and it's part of me and I have to do it and I have to express this thing inside of me. And that's what I think what Bowie is talking about right here is like we have this thing inside of us that has to come out. And your best art is probably just that coming out in its purest form. But at the same time, a huge chunk would be missing if I really was the last human being on Earth, because now it's not a method of communication so much as like a therapeutic self-discovery exercise for me. And that's beautiful. But if there's nobody there to hear it and there's no audience to engage with or communicate with, then it's almost just for me, And again, I think the point that Ruben and David Bowie here are making is often that like, you don't have to worry about that because in the end, the most potent communication with your audience will come through you pretending they don't exist, right? While you're creating. So in some ways, we're kind of saying the same thing. We're just getting to it in different ways. But I love this clip of David Bowie. I love what he shares here, and it gets my gears turning a lot. I think about this stuff quite a bit. So really cool.
Yeah, it seems like there is no perfect way that I've seen so far to describe that like middle ground. That's like saying both at the same time yet. Because like even as you're explaining it, your path specifically in my like vantage point here could apply to either direction at any point. So like the freestyling in general, your ability to free flow thoughts on the spot as you go, as intricately as you do, it can't necessarily be taken into much account of, oh, what is being thought of this as I go? Like, is this okay? So you're already letting go of a lot of that and you're allowing your stream of consciousness to do as it does, but also your freestyle mission as a whole, like the career of a freestyle, like who's going to say that was like fulfilling the expectations of the audience? That's pretty unique in a way, like the industry as a whole would be steering you, to more established paths if that was the case.
Yes.
And then what you say about the entertaining the people on stage, like that is also what you are craving to do, what you are fulfilled doing. So that's also you, not necessarily just going out there and doing this because that's what you want like the audience to have. Like that is what you are like, I think like, born with the capability to do at such a high level and fulfilled to do. So, it all plays in each way, almost on every level.
Yeah. Well, thank you too. I appreciate that. And I agree. And I think it's like, the whole point is to have a bunch of tools in your toolkit, and then it's like you pull out the right tool for the right job, like if you're like, somebody who works with tools, you're not just like, hammer, that's it. Like I found it, hammer. It's like, I got to take this screw out. I guess I'll use the back part of the hammer. This is really inconvenient. It's like, they made a tool for this, right? You're like, nah, dude, I'm hammer. And so I feel like as humans, that's what we try to do. We're like, what's the one philosophy, like the silver bullet, like that's so convenient and easy. Like if there was just one philosophy that just encompassed all of it, then I could just learn that philosophy and I'd be set for life. That's it. That's all I would ever have to know. That's the only way I'd ever have to view it. And, but I don't think that's how it works. The goal should be to build up a toolkit. And there's times where completely ignoring the audience, or to your point, completely ignoring like the pre-established norms of the industry. Nobody would have advised me to go this path. They would have said like, people have tried, that doesn't work. Figure out how to do it the way that we all do it over here. Don't be the one guy over there. Trust me. Mm-hmm. I needed to ignore them. That was the correct tool to pull out of the kit in that moment of my career when I was like getting things off the ground and just like tripling down. I'm like, no, I'm going to freestyle, man. I'm going to improvise. I'm really going to do it. And I'm going to take it on tour. And I'm going to headline. And I'm going to play for an hour and a half. And so on and so forth, Yeah. And then there's time. And then when I'm actually out on stage and I feel like, why is the energy not as high as it needs to be? Well, then I got to put the hammer back and pull out the screwdriver and be like, we cranking this fucking thing up right now. I'm going to reach, what do we need to do? Because it's not just me up here. It's y'all out there and we're going to work together on this. So, both approaches are valid and they both have their place. And, I also just feel like so often, like if everybody had to apply all the nuance and all the disclaimers every time, then we wouldn't have geniuses like David Bowie and Rick Rubin who can just like go out there and say like, hey, I'm representing this philosophy, in our time. And I'm representing it boldly. This is what I believe. And we're so lucky that we get to have people like that. If he always had to say, but also, here's the other way to think about it. Like, there's just one tool in your toolkit. It's like, okay, like, so anyway, Yeah, I love it, dude.
That's tight.
Moments of
Yeah.
flow, baby.
Let's go.
Hell yeah. Great polls, man. Thank you for those. I'm always really inspired. I sometimes wish I just did moments of flow all day, man. Like
They're fun, man. They're fun.
I'd be flowing. But but we're not here to do moments of flow all day. Okay. We already gave you the double dose, and it's time for Meet the Team, baby.
Yeah.
Meet the Team. Who do we have today?
We got Cheyne today, man. We're keeping Meet the Team going with Cheyne.
Yes. Hell yeah. Shout out to Cheyne, an amazing human being, asset to the team. He's on the social media team, and he focuses on metrics and analytics as well as paid advertising. He's an absolute asset and a joy to work with, and he's up in the Pacific Northwest, but I've gotten to meet him several times when we're on tour, and it's always just such a joy to hang with him and spend time with him. And I'm excited to hear what he has to ask here.
Hey, Harry. Hey, Sam. Thanks for the opportunity to share a little bit about what I do on Team Mack and for the chance to ask a question and get a peek behind the scenes or look under the top of the dome. My name is Cheyne. I live in the Pacific Northwest, so I work on the social media team here at Team Mack. I've been with the team for a little over 3 years now, and it's truly been one of the biggest blessings having the opportunity to work alongside so many talented and passionate people. On the team, my role consists of social media posting, metrics and analytics review and reporting, paid advertising, and whatever else may come my way. And it's been a blast so far. I've loved every second of it. Now, before I get to my question, I wanted to note that as a dad of 4 kiddos myself, I know firsthand just how much starting a family completely rewires your brain and shifts your worldview. It's wild, it's challenging, and it's a beautiful ride. Now, having recently stepped into that chapter yourself, my question or questions are about how a change so significant, so major impacts you and your artistry. How has becoming a father and starting a family impacted your creative process? When you drop into flow state, do you find yourself naturally gravitating towards themes of fatherhood and family now? And looking ahead, how do you foresee this new chapter coloring your creativity, your artistry, and your goals moving forward? Thanks again, Harry, for the chance to ask these questions and for the opportunity to be a part of something so incredibly positive, so incredibly joyful, and something that makes a difference in the lives of so many people across the world. I appreciate everything that you do. I appreciate everything that the team does. And I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts. Thank you.
Hell yeah. Shout out my boy Cheyne. That's awesome. Great question, man. And always great to see your face, man, and to hear from you. Yeah, I mean, okay, so becoming a father, man. How has it impacted my creativity? Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's interesting because it's not, I wouldn't say that like my style, like when I get on the mic, has shifted per se. Or that like, you know, my content is now, it's not like I'm freestyling primarily about being a father, let's say. But I know that it will have a massive impact as soon as there is an opportunity. And I'm sure there will be an opportunity soon because there have been many opportunities even before I was a father myself to rap about this concept of fatherhood or being a parent or what that relationship is like from a parent to a child. And, you know, it's kind of interesting because often, like in my live shows, certainly, and often like on the happy hours that we do on Patreon when it's like one-on-one and it's very intimate, people will request that I do a freestyle about their kid or their kids, you know, and they'll share with me, you know, like what their favorite thing has been about the journey of being a parent. And, you know, one thing I really love about freestyling is it's an exercise in empathy, you know, and like I'm listening to what people are sharing with me and I'm trying to use my imagination to say, okay, well, what would it be like to be this person, you know, to be this person who is a parent? Even before I had a daughter, you know, and I had never actually been a parent. It's like, I'm trying to imagine and use empathy to put myself in their shoes. And then I end up doing a freestyle from that perspective, essentially. And it's so beautiful and fulfilling for me to be able to do that and for people to feel seen and heard through that, you know? So it's a beautiful thing. But again, I have to use my imagination and I have to use the information that they're sharing with me. But now I have lived experience, you know? So now when the topic emerges, whether it's suggested to me directly, like I just explained, or if my brain suggests it to me through free association, you know, regardless of what the initial spark was to get me going, at some point I might suggest to myself that I start speaking on what it means to be a father, what it means to be a girl dad, you know, what it means to be expanding my family, what it means to have brought a human being into this world in this time, you know, and I can speak to that from a real lived place. And to be honest with you, I don't know how it's going to come out in those moments, but I know it's gonna come out. And so in that sense, it will have influenced my steez. And I think, like, more broadly, it's just made me really, having a daughter has just filled me with so much awe and so much wonder and so much love and so much appreciation for things that I may have taken for granted in the past. So, you know, it's easy to just be like, yeah, man, I'm a freestyle rapper. You know, that's my job. I do that. I do that every day. I get to go on tour. You know, it's how I earn my living, and I get to build out this great team of people who I genuinely enjoy being around. And of course, you know, I'm a musician. I've always been a musician, you know, and you can kind of just be like, yeah, that's what it is, man. Like, everybody's got a job. I got mine. I do think having a daughter has made me like look at things in my life through new eyes, because I'm almost imagining like, wow, how's she going to see this? You know, like when she actually starts forming her own memories, like what's she going to think about me and my job and what I do, you know? And then it's made me reflect back on like when I was a tiny little kid and I first saw like somebody playing a drum set live, like at the Waterfront Blues Festival in Portland. And I was like, what is that? That's amazing, you know? Or looking up to my dad, you know, and being like, what does he mean he goes to work? What is work? You know, where is that? You know? And so like, I start to think about just, you know, how that's going to look to her. And there's all these crazy moments where I'm just like, whoa, dude, like I'll share, like, for example, like sometimes I'll just drum on her high chair, like really fast, like on the tray. I'll just like play some like rudiments with my hands, and she'll just be like staring at my hands, like zoned in. And then as soon as I'm finished, she'll just like, and then she'll like smile and she'll just start hitting it with her hands, like her own version of it, like as fast as she can. She's just like smiling and her whole body's in it. And we'll just go back and forth for a while. And it's not rap, but it's rhythm and it's music and it's my drumming, you know, and it's all connected to me. And I'm just like, whoa, like we're sharing in this music in this moment. You know, and she has a little toy piano and a little toy percussion kit. And so like, we'll try to have jam sessions. The problem is she's most interested in whatever instrument I'm on. So it's hard to have a jam session because she'll be at the piano and then I'll start playing on the drums and she'll immediately look at what I'm doing and then start reaching over to get the drum mallet. So then I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So then I take the piano. But then now when I start playing that, she just reaches over and wants to play the piano. So we're still working on that part. But I do think that sharing in music with my daughter is like, what a meaningful thing, you know, for me and hopefully for her. And, you know, I'm not like of the mind that she'll be a musician and I'm going to train her up to be, you know, who knows, she might not be into it. If she's into it, cool, you know, I'll support in whatever way I can. But in these moments, it's like, wow, this is pretty special, you know, to be able to share music with my daughter, because it's so meaningful to me and she's so meaningful to me. So yeah.
That's so dope, man. That's
yeah,
so dope.
bro.
But also too, like what you're saying earlier with how like it allows you to maybe take those vacation or step away, like, and it gives you this whole other thing to focus on. Like, you know, that has to come into just when you go back to the creative side in some certain way, you know, so like it almost balances it out. So even if it's not directly affecting the bar specifically, it's just like your outlook, I would assume, is
100%
affected.
Without a doubt, dude. No, that's a great point. Like, she makes me appreciate the craft more, you know, because now she'll take me away from it and, you know, she's in charge, right? Especially now. It's like, I might think I'm going to go practice, but it's like, oh, she's struggling to go down for the nap. I guess I'm not going to go practice, you know? So, and so she takes me away in those ways, but she also takes me away where I'm volunteering to step away because I'm like, man, I don't want to miss these moments. I want to spend this time with her. And then when I go back to working on the craft, yes, it is very much like taking little mini vacations throughout the day. You know, it used to be like mainly one thing. And now it's like, no, man, there's there's this other huge thing that is like the most important thing of your life so far, and that is, you know, being there for your daughter. So yeah, it's very healthy. Yeah, it forces balance in a way, and also it's, you know, it's very challenging, as any parent will tell you, in certain ways, but yeah, I don't know. It's also one of those things where it's like, it's so annoying to say it because everyone says it, like, where it's like, yeah, you'll understand if you ever have a kid, you know, you'll understand. It's like, until then, you can't really explain it. Everyone would always say that to me. I'm like, oh God, this again, you know. But now here I am on the other side of it, and it's like, it's so true. Like how it's on paper before you do it, you're like, that's going to be impossible. There's no way I can do there's no way I can like accomplish my goals and also somehow raise a child. Like, how am I ever going to do that? Where's the time going to come from? And then it happens, and then you just find the time, you know, and it all starts to work. And you shave away a lot of turns out you were just wasting a lot of time. That's one big piece. And then you just reprioritize. You're like, you know, maybe that thing doesn't matter as much as I thought it did. So life-changing, to say the least, and honestly and sincerely, like the greatest joy of my life so far. Like, and everybody says that and you have to say it, but like, I sincerely mean it so much. It's crazy.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Hell yeah. Shout out to Cheyne, man. Yeah. Much love to my guy. Always showing up with the best attitude, the best energy, just a beacon of positivity, man, for real, from within the team. And yeah, keeping us straight, man. Watching those charts, watching those numbers, making sure our content is working.
It's really good at what he does, man.
Incredible.
Like, great dude, really good at what he does, man.
High level.
So many insights that we wouldn't see without him. So
absolutely. Absolutely. Hell yeah. Well, in addition to team members, you know, I want to answer some of your questions. Shout out to everybody that's been watching, listening, commenting, sharing, supporting the pod, man. I love it so much. Thank you guys for showing up. If you want to ask me a question, harrymacofficial.com/flowstatepod is where you go. You can send in a video, you can send in an audio recording, you can type something up. Either way, we will consider your questions for the show, but I want to get into at least a couple of these for this episode. So let's see what we got. Starting with the G within.
What's up, Harry? So music and memory seem to be really tied together. Like when you haven't heard a song for years and all of a sudden you can just instantly remember all the lyrics. Or like you can picture what you're doing in your life when that song was popular. And it just got me thinking, like, I really can't think of another art form that takes up that much room in our brains. And so I just wanted to hear what you thought about what that means in terms of our connection with music. All right, thanks. Peace.
Hell yeah, much love. G within, appreciate the question, man. It's a great question and a great thought and observation. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I mean, we know that music and memory are tied together very closely, and there have been a lot of studies on this, and yeah, I'm not well versed in the studies, to be honest with you, but I have seen videos, you know, of people, for example, playing like a popular song from, they'll have like a very old person, like maybe over 90 years old, who is suffering from, you know, the natural, you know, loss of the mind, right? Like in terms of some form of dementia, perhaps, you know, they're struggling to remember things in their life. It's a very sad thing that can happen, right? And there will be these videos that are incredibly moving where they're like put headphones on this guy's ears and like play a popular song from like the 30s or 40s that he would have like been a kid when it was popular. It's like immediately dancing and singing the words along with the song, you know, just like immediately remembers it. Really powerful. And yeah, I mean, I'm the same way. Every once in a while, I'll remember like, oh, whoa, dude, like this album or this song that I used to listen to in middle school. Like I was obsessed with it, and I haven't listened to it in like decades. You know, like let me throw that on real quick, find it on Spotify or whatever, and listen to it. And it's so crazy. It's like, whoa, I'm getting like almost like in a dream where you get like glimmers and feelings, but they're not like. It's not like a vivid high resolution always, but it's almost like a flash of like some memory of some like locker or some hallway or something I haven't thought about. And weirdly too, sometimes I'll almost smell something I haven't smelled in a long time, which is so weird. And it's like I'll smell some like Portland, you know, like leaves in the rain kind of smell or something that I would have smelled on my walk to school. And of course, we also know that smell is like really tied to memory, and one of the big like that'll ping that imagery as well. So I don't know the science. I wonder if it is like bi-directional in a sense, like a smell can ping a memory, but can a memory ping a smell? It feels like that happens to me sometimes. Yeah. But yeah, I think, what does this mean in terms of our connection to music? I mean, I think one of the things that's so powerful and unique about music is it creates this soundtrack to our lives, right? You're probably not like walking to school with like a Van Gogh art book, just like looking at Starry Night while you walk to school, I mean, maybe you are, but probably not, right? But you very well may be listening to some music, or if you're at a house party, like your first house party, first time you ever drank a few beers and got a buzz, like what was playing, at the party. And you weren't just like looking at the speakers, listening, being like, this is a great album. You were doing other stuff. You were like trying to dance with this girl, or you were like trying to whatever. You were cracking jokes with your homies, you were like, oh my God, like I'm drinking a beer. Should I be doing this? Should I not? You were going through this crazy like turmoil of like adolescence and like coming of age, and like all this stuff was happening. This like really important, like emotionally packed stuff was happening. It was like a very dynamic roller coaster ride of a time, particularly when you're young, right? And I think that's kind of like the golden window of time when this music like really imprints on our memories. And so there's these like soundtracks to our lives, like Dr. Dre 2001 was just like at every house party every time when I was in high school, and like when I hear those songs, I'm still just like, yo, this is it. Like these are just bangers top to bottom. And it takes me back, and I'll always have like a special connection with those songs. And, there's so many songs that I was listening to in the car. I'd have the same CD in the car for weeks, just as soon as you fire up the engine, it just picks up wherever you left off. And when it gets to the end, it starts again at the top, and you really sort of absorb this stuff deeply, and it's before we had Spotify and before we had every song that was ever recorded available to us at all times. And there's pluses and minuses to both. And I always think it's funny too, because it's very popular to talk about how overwhelming it is to have DSPs where we can now listen to anything we want at any second, and it's true. And I do think it has sort of watered down my connection to music in a negative way. That said, if somebody came up to me in middle school and was like, hey bro, do you want this like little box that has every single song ever recorded on it? Like right now, you could just have it and you could just like pay me $10 a month and you'll have it. I would have been like, fuck yes, bro. Like give me that right now. I wouldn't have been like, maybe that'll water down my connection with music. And actually I think I'll just stick with my 30 CDs in this leather binder right here.
I prefer them in this order every time.
Exactly. But I do feel really grateful, that I grew up in a time where that's how we did it, because I listened deep, man, and I came to know everything about the records that I loved, And it's funny too how you observe, like when you hear an old song, you suddenly remember almost all of the lyrics. And I think about that all the time, because for me, that happened mostly during this era when I was younger, from like my, like, I don't know, I guess like, yeah, just little kid all the way up to like young 20s, or mid 20s maybe. And that's when I feel like it just started to kind of be like, okay, that window is closing in terms of like, I'm going to easily and accidentally memorize the lyrics to all these songs. Because that's what happened. It wasn't like I was like, yo, let me memorize every word. It wasn't an exercise. It just happened, And I think that has to do with our ability to just absorb information when we're young as much as anything. And then also probably just, the fact that like we are going through this like emotional roller coaster and everything is so new and so novel and we really don't know anything, and you never really know anything compared to how much there is to know, right? I am ignorant to most everything for my entire life. But at that point, you really don't know anything and you're experiencing so many new things and you're discovering yourself, and these songs become the soundtrack. But yeah, I do often think about how it's hard to do now. Like I almost would have to do an exercise to memorize lyrics now. And it's hard to get new vocabulary in, as a rapper and as a drummer. Like now I have to be very intentional and be like, okay, because I have my vocabulary. I can speak on these instruments fluently, but I speak within my vocabulary. And so much of it was developed during this window of time when I was young. And so now I have to be like, dude, I want to say some new shit. Like, and I have to like hammer it in, it's not as easy. But yeah, those are some thoughts.
I love it. I love that topic, man. Like you could take it so many different ways. And I love how like you're saying, like you don't necessarily walk to school, like just, staring at a portrait. And I think like this is where like music does differentiate itself in a way, because while that portrait is still made from an artist who's like pouring his emotions and experiences into it, music is the one where it's like, you know, a lot of times we remember it from those adolescent years because we are so like in touch with our emotions and going through those things so vividly. And a lot of our favorite artists of music, of, you know, lyricists and stuff, they have the innate ability to hang on to that kind of wonder and keep writing lyrics that kind of punch into that like rawness and authentic vibe. So I think as music as a whole, it also is what we can experience as a group without having to, like, let's say, stand in front of a portrait and like decide to take it in. It just plays, and it is playing, and it's someone saying these words, and it's invoking those emotions so directly. So it's like such a unique spot in today's world where we can all share like an actual like raw, authentic emotion of some sort, whether we're like taking it the exact way the artist is laying it out or not. But like, it just really is a rare avenue these days for us to all like be in a building and like vibe out to something and share this like, you know, aura that's being like sent out our way, and that just really latches onto those moments for me as well. I always think school bus. It always sends me to a school bus, like what grade I was in, what like Sony Walkman or first iPod or like what it was. Like I always go back to the school bus for some reason. Like one ear pod in, someone else has the other. Like it really does send you back, man.
Definitely. No, I agree, man. Yeah, and it's funny too, because I sometimes think like as we grow up and mature, it doesn't necessarily help one become a better artist. Like me being like more detached from my emotions in a healthy way sometimes, to where I'm not so reactive, you know, and like if I have a negative emotion, it's not like defining my experience. I'm like, oh, okay, I can observe this, I can breathe through this. It's like, is that gonna make like that song that just connects with the youth? Probably not. Like the whole point is you're like, my world is ending, you know, as a just cliche example. But
trash the hotel room as like a rock star instead of like deal with your emotions responsibly.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, don't feel like most bangers are not about like, I'm a responsible adult who has learned how to like contextualize my emotions and like not be so reactive. But you know, the cool thing, and then you get into the whole Andre 3000 thing where he was like, what am I going to rap about now? Getting a colonoscopy. And like a lot of people were like offended by that, because they were like, bro, you know, there's a lot of older people in hip hop now, all ages. And some of the people that were his, you know, contemporaries were like, dog, no, we're not making songs about colonoscopies. We're still making great music. And I'm sure, you know, of course he knows that, but he feels as though he doesn't have anything potent to share at this time. And I think that's totally valid. But it is also true that as we age and go through these different seasons of life, if you're creating music about that, there are people that are in that season of life with you who are really going to appreciate it, right? So there's lots of different ways to have an impact creatively. But man. Great question. Thank you thank you to the G Within. We'll grab one or two more of these and keep it rocking. We got one here from Philip V. Philip says, Harry Mack, you're an alchemist and a wizard of words. Thank you. Thank you for the inspiration. You are welcome. In episode 36, you talked about the many forms of improvisational art, which made me think about my own experience with flow state. I'm a drummer. I've always loved poetry, and I was drawn to theater and improv for that feeling of unscripted mystery unfolding in real time. Professionally, though, most of my experience has been as a line cook around the Chicago suburbs. What I loved most was the flow state of a dinner rush. Once the line gets moving, everyone has their position and instrument: grill, broiler, fryer, salads, desserts, dishwashing. And it starts to feel like an orchestra with the chef conducting. Everyone's jamming in rhythm and hours fly by. Do you see that kind of kitchen flow as another form of improvisational art, similar to music, theater, poetry, or freestyle? Awesome question. And thank you for sharing a little bit about yourself as well. That was really cool. And I really love the way that you described the whole orchestra of the kitchen with the chef conducting. Super cool, and brings it into my world and really helps me understand. I've never worked in a kitchen, but that was awesome imagery there. And yes, I mean, to answer your question, plain and simple, off the rip, yes, I absolutely see that as a form of improvisational art, without a doubt. I mean, these are the culinary arts that we're talking about, right? Obviously, when you go eat at a restaurant, you are appreciating somebody's art, and in this case, the collective art that is created by the group. And you're all improvising together. And I love the image of an orchestra with the chef conducting. I also think it's really relevant to being in a jazz ensemble, where you're playing improvised music together. Because when you all show up to the kitchen, you don't know exactly what's going to happen. Yes, there's a menu. That's sort of like, the standard repertoire that we all learn as jazz musicians. We know the songs, we know what the chord progressions are and we know the melodies. But we don't know which song is going to get called, or in your case, which dish is going to be ordered, or how many of which dish are going to be ordered, and what's going to be coming back to us, from the front of house. And I'm sure unexpected problems arise, right? Somebody drops a pan when moving from one spot to another, or somebody accidentally made the wrong thing, or misheard what somebody else said, or, something got cold. I'm basing all of this on The Bear. I don't know if you guys watch The Bear, but I imagine it gets very stressful back there at times, or at least it can. And because of that, it must just feel incredibly euphoric when everything is flowing and everything's landing right in the pocket, and you all are sort of achieving that collective groove together. And that's also how it feels on the bandstand. You never know if it's going to hit that place where it's all really locked in and really grooving, but when it does, man, it's the best feeling in the world. And I got that from what you shared here. But yeah, absolutely, it's an improvisational art. Food is an art. There's the aroma of the food and the presentation of the food and the plating and the timing, and even down to like the table settings and stuff like that, and the vibe that they're trying to achieve in the atmosphere in the restaurant and in the space where the food is being enjoyed. So yeah, I see it as an improvisational art, and I see the opportunity for improvisation in all moments of life. It might be a stretch to call it improvisational art in some cases, or maybe not. I don't know. That's for people to debate in the comment section, respectfully. But driving on the freeway is improvisational. Are you going to change lanes, or are you going to stay in your lane? It certainly becomes very improvisational if you miss your exit, right? What am I going to do now? And in the conversations that we have with people throughout our lives, we're always improvising. And therefore, there's always an opportunity for flow state to occur, in my view. So I love this. Shout out to Philip V.
Yeah, dude, that's a dope question. I love bringing it to the jazz ensemble, too, because like you said, too, a lot in past episodes and discussions about jazz, it's kind of like, everyone plays differently too. So the person next to you in the kitchen too, like the way that they're going to be passing it to you, you have to kind of like learn their rhythm, both on the left and right side of you. That imagery just clicks for sure.
Hell yeah. Well, I love it. What do you think? We got time for one more?
We could do one more. Yeah, let's do one more. We'll try to keep it as brief as possible. But let's get it.
Let's get it. All right. This one comes from RZA.RY _ RZA Rye. Why is rap so influential? Oh, wow. Yeah, we'll keep it short. Just a simple question. No, this is a huge question, obviously. And I am just one person, so... and I should say, I am not the be-all and end-all. In fact, to be completely honest, there are people that are better suited to answer this question definitively. And, if for no other reason than the simple fact that I'm a guest in this culture, right? Obviously, I'm a white person. Hip hop is a black cultural art form. And so I don't find it controversial at all to say that I'm a guest in the culture. I came to it through the recordings that I heard. I learned about it first, and then I started participating. So I don't feel as though I should be your singular source in answering the question of why rap is so influential. That being said, I'm more than happy to share my answer to this question to the best of my ability in this moment. I think there are so many reasons why rap is so influential. One that comes to mind right away, what are the two sonic elements that are most prominent in a hip hop song? Drums and voice, right? Drums and voice. These are the original instruments. And I'm talking about pre-language. Like before we could express ourselves with words, we expressed ourselves with drums and our voices. And it might not have been a drum carved out of wood, but cats were definitely banging sticks on cave walls or knocking two rocks together to make percussive sounds and vocalizing, to express themselves musically. So I'm a drummer, as most of you know, and I'm very proud to be a drummer. And one of the things that makes drumming so cool is that every time you strike a drum, you're connecting to like thousands of years of human history and the way that we have expressed ourselves since the dawn of humanity, which is fucking epic. And hip hop puts those two elements like at the forefront so aggressively. Like look at Suck MCs by Run DMC. The whole song is just drums and voice. That's all there is. It's just the drum machine and the rap. And that's it. No chords, no melodic elements, no bass line even. That's all you need. In hip hop, drums and voice are the non-negotiables. And so I think that creates a very visceral feeling in us as humans. And it's just innately human to just hear those sound sources in such a raw way. So that might be a part of it. In my view, that's definitely a part of it. I think also, hip hop is influential because it tells this story of, succeeding against all odds. Hip hop is a music that was born out of oppression, right? And, it's a music that was born in these poverty-stricken neighborhoods that most of the rest of America was just turning a blind eye to and not paying any attention to. The system of government at the time was not reaching out to help in any way, shape, or form. And so, the odds were against these people. And yet, from these poverty-stricken neighborhoods, it grows this incredible cultural art form that is so immensely beautiful that it eventually penetrated the mainstream and became the most popular music in the world at one point. And so that is just an epic story, flat out. It's a beautiful story. And all of our favorite stories, the hero's journey is like the hero goes out and like slays the monster, and then comes back home with a new lease on life, like taking these lessons learned through this incredible challenge into the next chapter of life. Those are like all of our favorite stories are that. And in many ways, hip hop's origin story revolves around that, where it really is this story of like Black excellence and ingenuity rising up against systemic oppression and overcoming that. And of course, it's an ongoing struggle, and hip hop still continues to speak to that struggle against systemic oppression in a really powerful and meaningful way. So I think, that's a factor as well. I also think hip hop was in its inception true counterculture, right? It went on to become like the most mainstream thing in the world, and now it's very corporate and it makes billions of dollars, and there's costs that come with that, but in the beginning, like in its rawest, purest form, it was totally a counterculture, just like, skateboarding in its inception. It was like all about breaking all the rules. And so that's, I think, just inherently very appealing to the youth, because hip hop is like one of those things where it's like the older generation doesn't understand, and they don't want to try to understand, but the kids are like, nah, man, this is how we feel. And so hip hop is breaking all the rules. You were never supposed to put your hand on the record, on the turntable. Like, don't touch the record. Like your parents are like, don't touch the record. What are you doing? You're going to damage it, let alone pull it back and forth. It's like, what are you doing? They're pulling their hair out, yelling at the kids, and all this stuff. And that's what hip hop did, like, fuck that. We touch the records, we manipulate the records in real time. All the way down to, NWA having a song called Fuck the Police. Whoa, you can't do that. That's the title of your song. They're like, fuck you, we did it. And for good reason. You should listen to this shit because this is our real experience. And you're not going to necessarily learn about this through the mainstream media outlets that exist, right? That's just incredibly powerful, to break all the rules. And so I think, that's a huge component as well to rap being so influential. And then one other thing, too, that comes to mind, is hip hop it's like simultaneously, in my view, the best example of modern poetry, like at the highest form. Like if you are into poetry and you're like, wow, where does poetry live? Like right now where it's like alive and bubbling and like happening at the highest level. It's like, look no further than hip hop. And that's not in any way meant to diminish people who write poetry outside of hip hop and do amazing work. Shout out to you all. But I in my view, hip hop is like where poetry is being pushed, and so it's that, right? The highest level of poetry. And also it has this like amazing, often, not always, but it often has this amazing conversational element to where, yes, it's advanced poetically, but it also often feels like you're talking to somebody that you know, or they're just like sharing their story with you. Oftentimes it feels like you bumped into somebody on the street and you were like, yo, what do you think about this? And they're like, here's my take. And they're just sharing it with you in this sort of raw, unfiltered, conversational way. And I think that's really unique to rap and to hip hop, because a melody is so transcendent, like a melody can be this heavenly thing. That just like you leave Earth through a melody. It's like the clouds part and the sun rays come through and it's like, whoa. Like you listen to Stevie Wonder, you might leave Earth. You're like, I don't know what the hell he's talking about. I could listen to it and then I would know, but I'm not even considering it right now because I'm ascending, through this melody. It's beautiful. And that's, obviously immensely powerful. But hip hop, at least in the beginning, it wasn't about melody at all, and a rap, now, of course, raps do contain a lot of melody, but like originally, like rap didn't really have a melody. That was the whole point. It was like this spoken thing, spoken word. It was like this poetry based thing. And so that inherently, I think, makes it feel so intimate and conversational. It's like there are no special effects here. Like it's not necessarily this transcendent melody that's pulling you off the earth. It's like we're both here on the earth. Our feet are on the ground and I'm talking to you. I'm talking to you through the record. So yeah, those are my thoughts off rip.
Those are great, man. Those are great points. It makes me think of a couple different things real fast too. Is like,
yeah,
I saw this video recently. I love it. Which maybe we'll link it in the show notes. Mack, I got to send it your way too. Is this video of this guy introducing his it was an Italian poet to Kendrick lyrics, and they go through like first 3 tracks on one of his recent records, and like the feedback from the poet was just. It was academic. It was right to the core. The connection between just a poet scholar and what Kendrick was doing was so interesting to see.
Damn, that's fire.
So when you said poetry, I'm like, yeah. And poetry, like you said, like much like, just percussion and vocal expression, like it existed with humans for so long for a reason. So that connection really like stands out. And the counterculture thing too, like that just stands out too, because like even as hip hop and rap is mainstream, it seems like its ability to evolve and that evolution being driven by like what that next underground thing is. So like you could take it recently, like a lot of what we have today is like kind of from that like 2015, like maybe a little bit later, like SoundCloud era. Like it makes its way up and into the mainstream, and it's like constantly evolving from that. You go Tyler the Creator, who's now like that is he's mainstream and like in a great way, like a successful way. But when he first came out, that counterculture, skate culture was what like drove that. So the ability to like the evolution of the genre is so interesting to watch.
Yeah. No, it's so true, and it is sort of the inevitable like mainstreamification of counterculture. Like counterculture can only be counterculture for so long because eventually it's going to get bought and it's going to be at Zoomies or whatever. It's like, right. It's like everybody knows now, like it's not what it was.
It's too good.
Yeah, it's too good. Too many people want this. So I guess there's no real way around that. There was like on the new Clips album, like Pharrell had this hook where he was like, they don't know what I'm on, or something like they don't know what I'm on when I'm on it. And by the time they figure it out, I don't want it. And I feel like that's kind of speaking to that. It's like he always wants to be in the counterculture. He always wants to be in the new wave, before it gets turned into the thing everybody knows and has a name for.
Yeah, it kind of aligns with some of those moments of flow things too. It's just like, not necessarily doing what is the standard of what cookie cutter thing might be the right structure.
Right.
I'm going to push the edge a little bit, and then that might make its way.
Yeah, hell yeah. I love it. Thank you all so much for your questions. I very much appreciate it. Once again, harrymackofficial.com/flowstatepod is where you submit your questions. I want to hear from you all. Hit me up, man. Pick my brain. I love answering your questions. I also love seeing what's happening and bubbling up in the freestyle community. So if you are an MC, a freestyler, someone who likes to improvise raps, man, record yourself doing it, film yourself, send it in, and we will consider reacting to your freestyle live on the pod. And that's what we're going to get into right here and now. We have one today, which comes from, I believe, DeusyRaps. Is that how that's pronounced?
Yes, sir. That's how I read it.
Awesome. DeusyRaps in the place to be. Much love. There's a note that comes along with it. I'll read it quick. It says, "Hey, Harry, I am a YouTube live freestyler and have been greatly inspired by you." Awesome. "Keep doing what you are doing. If you feel comfortable sharing, my channel is Deusy59 at DEUSY59 exclamation. I don't know if that's just in the sentence or if that's actually in the name, but we'll figure
Just
it out.
at Deusy59.
There you go. At Deusy59. We'll have it linked in the show notes, I'm sure. This submission is a clip of me freestyling off live chat. Awesome. My question is, how do you avoid being critical of yourself? I find that I always scrutinize my work so much more harshly than I would anyone else's. Thank you. Okay, well, I'll answer that question after we peep your freestyle. I want to check you out first. Let's hear from DeusyRaps, y'all.
Do that, flow amazing. Break your arm off, dislocation. I'm delusional, a revolutional. Breaking it down, constitutional. We gon' put it in a document. Every time I'm rocking this, when I'm spitting out the top, I really get it popping quick. Yeah, work the true is free, lasting perpetuity. And you know that I scorch it amazing. Freestyling corporation, incorporating bars of the brain. I be doing it, I'm hard with the flames. Bibles over bikinis, and when I spit it out the top too cleanly, you know I'm working. Surgeon said Bibles, not bikinis, but Birkins. That's okay, cause you really gotta check this. While you up in the morning like the breakfast, getting eggs, get it cracking, I'm rapping, I do it at the brain every time that I'm snapping. Yeah, when I'm rocking, been the stronger, freer. Boom, like onomatopoeia, really been the bomb, really be explosive. Pneumo ultra microscopic silica volcanoconiosis. With the faster beat, when it comes to spitting bars, I'm a masterpiece. Every time that I'm dropping the rhymes, transform on the track like I'm Optimus Prime. Make so much money, people saying yo, coming to the brain and I really got the flow, got a show. Bring another tough heat. They be saying like I love Eve. Who's Eve? Like it's Adam and Eve. I don't know every time that I'm smashing the beat. Dom Toronto, all rap, got a sick flow. Bring it back. Whoa.
Hey, let's go. Shout out to DeusyRaps going crazy off the live chat on YouTube. That's fire. A format I am very familiar with, so it's cool to see somebody else's take on it. No, that's fire, man. Dope. You know what? The first thing I really appreciated about it was the pocket, because you're doing this double time flow and you're very rhythmically locked in. And I'm very clear on what rhythm you are intending and you're executing it. You know, I've talked previously about how one of the things that stands out to me from some people who are working it out, you know, maybe earlier on their journey than DeusyRaps here, is there will be sometimes this like rhythmic ambiguity where I'm like, I don't know exactly what rhythm you meant, you know? And it kind of came out a little jumbled and it could have been a few different things. And I'm not convinced that you know what rhythm you meant, you know? But in this case, I did not sense any type of rhythmic ambiguity. It was very locked in. And that's not easy to do. That in and of itself is a challenging skill to figure out. So that was really dope. And then also a really good sense of like multisyllabic rhyming. There were a few right in a row, like incorporation. It was like I scorch and amaze them or something like that with incorporation. And there was one right before that as well. There were just a lot of like nice multisyllabic connections. And then also the pronunciation of that word, people throw that word in the chat for me all the time. It's just like a word that means like fear of long words, I think, or something like that. It's like one of those like Google longest words, and that's the one. But it sounded like you nailed the pronunciation, dude. Like you must have practiced that. That was insane. That was awesome, man. I was just like, whoa, that was so smooth. What did you just say? So that was fire. And yeah, just good energy, man. Good vocal inflection. I'm hearing you like connect, you know, the kind of like setup punchline multisyllabic things that you're doing direct from the chat with your own material as well. Like off of breakfast, it went into like cracking the egg, and there was this whole scheme that came off of egg that was just, you know, coming out of your mind. And you're using that material to connect one word from chat to the next. And you were doing it really cleanly and smoothing the edges really effectively. So just a lot to appreciate about how you're doing it already, man. I don't even know, you know, I mean, I in terms of feedback or advice, well, let me answer your question. I just remember that you actually asked for a specific type of advice. How to avoid being critical of yourself. I find that I always scrutinize my work so much more harshly than I would anyone else's. Yeah, I don't know, man. If you figure out the answer, you let me know. Because I, like you, also find that I always scrutinize my work so much more harshly than I would anybody else's. I mean, I think that's a very human thing. I think it's incredibly relatable, whether you make art or not. The unfortunate truth is that most of us say very mean things to ourselves throughout the day, and we do it all the time, and we hardly even notice it. If you've ever missed your exit on the freeway and said, God, you're such an idiot, imagine saying that to somebody else. You would have to be at the ultimate height of anger, and hopefully you wouldn't say it even then. But you say it to yourself freely and easily, you know. I mean, hopefully you don't, but most of us do, and I certainly do and have. And it's something that I work on. So, you know, I think on the one hand, it's this lifelong practice of figuring out how to be kinder to ourselves, right? And figuring out how to have grace with ourselves. And really think about the things you say to yourself as if you were to say them to somebody else, and ask yourself, like, would I ever say that to somebody else? And if the answer is no, then what are you doing saying it to yourself? You know, so that's one piece of it. I also heard something recently that really resonated with me, and it has a lot to do with what I was talking about previously. You know, on the last episode, I was talking about my experience going on Nora Jones' podcast and how I was being hard on myself after that. I thought that I maybe didn't do a good job, you know, and then the podcast came out and I was like, oh, wow, it's good, you know? And it's the same exact thing that happened after I went on the Ellen show the first time. It's the same exact thing that happened after I freestyled for Kendrick. It's the same exact thing that still happens to a degree after a lot of my performances, a lot of my concerts. I walk off stage and I'm like, damn, I don't know, man. Were they feeling it? And in almost every case, it's like, yeah, dude, it was good. It was at least way better than I'm acting like it was inside of my mind. It's not necessarily the greatest thing ever created. It's certainly not the greatest thing ever created. It's not like God's gift to hip hop or music, but it's a lot better than I'm imagining it is in my head. And I heard something that resonated so much where the person was saying, if you are consistently surprised by how well the thing went, then maybe it's time to start believing in yourself. And I was like, damn. That's so real. Like, if after all of these things, I'm like, man, it was probably terrible. And then it's like, once again, dude, it was solid, man. It was good. You did your job. You know, you did a good job. Like, why was I beating myself up that whole time? You know, maybe it's time to start believing in myself. Like, maybe I can show up and be like, you know what? I don't think this is going to be the greatest thing ever done, but I think it's going to be pretty fucking good because this is what I do, you know? And so I think if you, Deusy59, can bring some of that into your worldview as well. You know, you submitted this freestyle on Flow State Podcast, and I think it's really, really good, man. So, you know, you don't have to be so hard on yourself, man. And, you know, music is a lifelong challenge, and there's always ways to get better. And so that's really the hard thing, right? Is balancing those two things and holding both truths together simultaneously. I feel like that's been kind of the low-key theme of this pod a little bit. That's come up at least a couple times of like two things are true at the same time. On the one hand, you got a lot of work to do. You know, I say that to myself, and to anybody that's making art. And when I listen to my favorite artists in interviews, they always acknowledge the same thing. It's like, man, that's so much I'm trying to get better at, you know? So you don't check it off the list. And at the same time, you're doing a really great job. And you have a lot of it together already. And you got to be easy on yourself, you know? So finding that balance. It can't be all like, oh, I got it figured out, I'm great. Then you enter that delusional space. But most of the artists that I encounter don't have that problem. You know, they tend to have the problem of like, I think all my shit is terrible. And, you know, how do I get past that? And I think, you know, you gotta be kind to yourself. You gotta have grace with yourself. And, you know, it's probably time to start believing in yourself. So if y'all rocked with DeusyRaps, man, throw some hearts in the comments. Let our friend here know he's on his path and he's doing well and his train is on schedule. And wow. Another one for the books, man.
Episode 38.
38, baby. The 3 to the 8. You know how we do. Oh, man, I enjoyed myself. Should we close this thing out?
Let's get it, man. Let's get a freestyle.
Right. Y'all know how we do, man. Let's go. Yeah. 1, 2, 1, 2. Flow state, come on, yeah. Flow state, come on, yeah. Entering my flow state, deepest state of meditation, lifting off the ground via levitation. I don't need no medication in this moment, I'ma use my breath. If the mic is live, y'all know Mack about to step. I've been putting in the reps, the mic is what I stay lacing. Had to take a break, so I went and took a vacation. Y'all know that my flow moves like water. Just me, my wife, and my daughter. The three of us, the trio, like Red Garland playing with Paul Chambers and Art Taylor. Y'all know not one of us run things like the mayor, cause we all in charge. Mostly my daughter in charge. You know she does it large. When she wants to nap, then it's nap time. When she wants to eat, then it's snack time. Used to be when I wanna rap, it's rap time. Nowadays it ain't always Harry Mack time. Learning about balance. Vacation used to be a challenge. Didn't know how to relax. I wanted to spit more bars and be proud of the raps. Like if I ain't working, then how can I be proud of the Mac? Just some more toxicity slipping into my ambition. I'm proud to be on this damn mission. Putting in the work is good, gotta make the effort, but you can't keep putting in the work forever. You gotta find a way to reset, shut the computer down. When you open it back up, there's the future sound. Coming back to my drums, feeling fresh. Coming back to the mic, new rhymes to manifest. Life is like a test, and we pass with flying colors. Finding new ways to reach out to each other. Me being isolated, gotta end this. Gotta take time to reinvest in friendships. If I ain't sitting across from people I love, if we ain't discussing strategies for rising above the obstacles in life that seem impossible, then tell me what's the point. My homies, they inspire every joint that I rock up on the MIC. I'm about to teach myself eventually to counteract some of my tendencies while honoring myself and using grace. It's hard to keep the balance in this place, but that's what we chase on this podcast. That's what we searching for. That's what we yearning for. That's what we working for. That's what we striving for. That's what we getting at. Trying to find the answers to life while I'm spitting raps. Maybe the answers never come in full, or maybe some answers are for the brain and some are for the soul, and some answers might be for the heart. Some answers are for the body. We need some answers to start, but no answer is one to solve them all. There ain't no silver bullet as it's sometimes called. We need different tools inside of our toolkit. A hammer, a screwdriver, something to fool with, something to pull out that's right for the job. It's not one tool for everything. Imagine, my God, you can't use a hammer to unscrew a screw. I mean, you can, but you're gonna be frustrated if you do. So let's apply different philosophies depending on where we're at. Take it from your boy Harry Mack, but at the same time, take it with a grain of salt. I don't mean to sound like I have the answers, my fault. I'm just one human being. I'm a guest in this culture to be able to add on. I'm blessed, I'm grateful just to be here. All of us, we gotta live. I feel I got a lot to give. I'm trying to keep it positive, adding on, I remain additive. Every time I'm on this microphone, I get to snapping quick, opening my viewpoint to any philosophy that you show me. I'm learning from the legend David Bowie about what it means to ignore the audience. Don't play for the gallery. Y'all know how it be when you in the studio, when you getting creative. Gotta be you in conversation with your soul, you related to your heart. And in this moment you can maybe channel the art. Maybe you can use your muse above as a spark, but you can't be thinking about the packaging or thinking about how will they start reacting when they hear me rapping in this particular tone. Will this help me elevate my career or get into a higher zone? Fuck that shit. Clear your mind of the nonsense. It's interrupting your connection to the content. But when I'm on stage, I know I remain the fly entertainer, microphone flamer, top of the game aimer, the most insane to come and claim the crown. And I'm sitting in my throne with the sound, dog. I'm spitting in the zone, getting wicked with the poems. Poetry embedded in humanity, and y'all know I get righteous, my son. Connect to human history each time I'm striking my drum. Yeah, it's insane. Plenty lives I save, man. I got the stick beating the wall like a caveman, banging two rocks together, drum and the voice, hip hop forever. When we meld them, we get rid of sucker MCs like Run DMC. Ain't nobody touching the steez. I'm busting the freeze. Something different, I'ma go the distance cause I'm infinite. Utilize the original instruments, voice in the drum, rhythm, making people listen. Make a split second decision, mental incision. This is real non-fiction. Yes, I have a musical addiction, also a flow state addiction, so I go inside my zone. Y'all know I don't write the poems. Sometimes I do, but in this instance I'ma tap into the infinite energy while I flow off top with the remedy. What's my tendency? To hit you where it counts. Long as the beat is banging, Mack is about to bounce. I'm doing whatever I'm feeling, I'm 1 in a million, and y'all know I got divine hooks. I'm in the flow with my squad like I'm a line cook. I'm cooking up in the kitchen, my flow enriching. The chef is like the conductor, we never about to rupture. We all in flow properly, I know we about to kill it. We all have our instruments, the dishwasher, the skillet, the dessert person, the salad person, the one who cuts through the meat like a surgeon, the butcher. Y'all know I ain't never getting punked, no Ashton Kutcher. Mack about to push it to the limit, cause when I be rhyming off top, I'm I'm infinite. Stepping up to the podium, going in, I never been timid. When I be rhyming like this, my competition look with the grimace. I pay no attention. I came through the slated squad, I'm getting rid of your henchmen. Whenever I rhyme, I'm Thomas Edison, that be the way I'm invented. Post a video now on the internet, y'all know the Mack is trending. And this here is only the beginning. What? I gotta rock on the podcast for the fans, answering their questions so that I can understand. Yeah, I'm hoping that this content will reach you. But the fans who pose the questions are like my teachers, learning from the people who submit their own rhymes, learning about myself and how I might shine. So what I mean to say, it's not one person dominating, cause when we do this podcast, it's like a conversation. Hope y'all learn from me while I'm learning from you. Another episode, y'all know what we returning to do. It's the 3 to the 8, the flow to the state. Sam on the cam and Mack going 8. It's the flow to the state, episode 3-8. And we open up our hearts every time we create. Let's go. Yeah. Y'all know what it is, man. Flow State, episode 38. Thanks for tuning in. We love y'all. Peace.